Thank you very much for being here and participating in my presentation. I know that there are many other interesting presentations at the same time, so I really appreciate for you to participate in this presentation. But as a disclaimer, this is my first presentation outside of my workplace, so I'm sorry if I'm a bit nervous or if I will make any mistakes along the way. Please excuse me. So let's start. So my name is Vinod. I think that's only we need to know at this moment for this presentation. But I'm going to talk more about identity and access management. So before jumping into more details about identity and access management, I want to make sure that we all are on the same page with the three terminologies, which is very important. Otherwise, you may not get this entire presentation. The first one is identity. What is identity? Identity is an attribute or set of attributes that uniquely describe a subject within a given context. So the uniqueness is very important. So if the attribute or set of attributes cannot uniquely describe, you shouldn't be using that as an identity. As an example, your passport is an identity document, and you may have a passport number and name that uniquely describe you for that particular identity document. The next one is authentication. It's little confusing even in the security domain, what is authentication and what is authorization. So authentication is the process of verifying the identity. So that's as simple as it is. It may be the identity of a user, it can be identity of a process, or it can be identity of a device. So authentication is as simple as it's a process of verifying identity. As an example, if you will take your passport to an immigration officer, he will make sure that that passport belongs to you. So he will authenticate to you. Also, one of the common form of authentication we use in the web is a username and password, even though it's not a great authentication way. The next terminology is authorization. Authorization typically happen after authentication. So you're expecting the authentication to happen before authorization. So authorization is typically granting an access based on some attributes. That's simple as it is. So authorization is little different from authentication. If you want to do an authorization, you should do authentication first. So why we need IAM? So IAM will help us to ensure that the right people have access to the right things at the right time. It is very important that right people will have access to the right things at the right time. Also, it will help us to keep the wrong people out. So that is also important for an IAM. In fact, IAM is there to ensure CAM, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You need a proper, secure IAM in order to ensure CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It's essential to have a secure IAM in order to implement that. This is not a secure identity and access management. In fact, this is an insecure way to do it, and it's useless. And unfortunately, we have similar type of identity and access management with all our applications and many applications. It's also studies reveal that 81% of breaches involve stolen or weak credentials, and 91% of attacks are target credentials. And unfortunately, 73% of passwords are duplicate. This is a sad reality. These studies are a bit old. Recently, there is a slight decrease in this number, but the thing is that bad people are interested in insecure IAM. They are looking to exploit insecure IAM and get your access. How to implement a secure IAM? The easy way to do secure IAM? Just go and read the NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. NIST published a special publication called Digital Identity Guideline 863 and 3. It has total of 400 pages. If you are interested to read it, I haven't read completely. So yeah. And interestingly, even OWASP, we have an application security verification standard, which also is a simplified version of a NIST identity guideline. We have nearly 100 plus security requirements related to secure IAM inside application security verification standard. So let's look into traditional ways of implementing IAM. As you can see, there is a user, an application, and an identity store. So the identity and access management is completely implemented in the application. So each and every application will be handling their own identity and access management. And user will be authenticate against that particular application. He may be using username and password or whatever other shared secret to authenticate. And his authentication credential may be stored in a standalone or shared database. It can be an LDAP storage as well. The problem with this way of doing IAM is that all those security requirements I mentioned with the NIST and the application security verification, all those are applicable to this application. So, the developers will have to spend a significant amount of time to implement a secure IAM with their application. So let's try a modern way of implementing secure IAM. So, as you can see in this Lego, they have created a fortress and secure all those 6 or 7 buildings inside that. So those 6 or 7 buildings, they don't need to worry about their own IAM. So what their security is depending on the main fortress, which is protecting their buildings, right? So yeah. So we can do the similar logic for our software security or for our applications. So we can do the same thing, we can do the same thing with our applications. We can have a central identity and access management system, which will fortify all our applications. All our applications will trust our central identity and access management system, and users will be authenticate against central identity and access management system. This is what Google does. This is what Microsoft does. This is what Apple does. Almost all technology companies, they don't handle identity and access management individually with their own application. They have a federated identity and access management. The big benefit is that none of these individual applications don't have to handle the authentication. So they are not tightly coupled with the authentication mechanism. So even tomorrow there is a new way of authenticating user, they can easily get that benefit from the central identity and access management system because they don't have to implement any multi-factor authentication, biometric authentication, whatever authentication is, they don't need to worry. They can directly consume from the identity access. As they are not handling the user credential, their attack surface is reduced. As I mentioned, attackers are interested in insecure application, which is handling IAM insecurely. So if they are not handling any credential, attackers won't be interested in to hack those applications. So user authentication can be reused across the application. So this can enable a single sign-on experience. If you go to your Gmail or G Drive, you will log into accounts.google.com once and you will have that single sign-on experience across all other Google applications. That will enable a better user experience for the user. Also, the federated identity and access management will help with the visibility for both cybersecurity team, also end user, about what are the login sessions they have. If they want, they can even revoke a session which is, unwanted section. And as authentication happening across multiple applications through identity access management system, there will be more contextual information about the authentication in the central identity. What I mean is, if your Gmail is accessed from China now, and someone else is accessing G Drive from Russia or America, accounts.google.com can know, you have multiple authentication sequence which don't looks right, and it may be bit odd, your account may be compromised. So that is very important to share that login information from different applications. OpenID Connect. So OpenID Connect is a way to implement the federated identity and access management. As per OpenID Foundation's definition, OpenID Connect is a simple identity layer on auth to protocol. It allows clients to verify the identity of end user based on authentication performed by the authorization server. So as you can see in the underpinning, there is OAuth and JWT, all other OAuth protocol suite and JWT suite inside OpenID Connect. In fact, OpenID Connect uses so many other protocol stack in OAuth protocol. OpenID Foundation. So OpenID Foundation is the foundation behind OpenID Connect. The OpenID Foundation promotes, protect, nurture the OpenID community and its technology. So OpenID Connect has different working groups. One of the interesting working group is FAPI. It's called Financial Grade API, which is used for UK's open banking to implement the payment service directive, which is an extended version of OpenID Connect, so that banks can securely federate their customers' data between financial services, and they make the payments and record things, right? So, and there are other interesting working group like iGov, which is for a government-based identity and a risk, and for hurt for a medical industry. So there are like a more focused working group to provide more secure identity and access management for different industry. JSON Web Token. This is one of the very important thing in OpenID Connect. This is the mess. This is how OpenID Connect exchange the identity information between the clients and resource server. So JSON Web Token is basically a URL-based stick or encoded data. If you will decode it, it has mainly three parts. One is header. The first part is header. The second part is the claim. That is the actual data. The third part is the signature, which is signed by your identity provider. So identity provider will have a private key. So they will sign the JWT token using their private key. And they have an endpoint where they expose the corresponding public key. So the clients or relaying parties can go and take that public key and verify this token is actually signed by the identity provider. So if you will decode the token, you can see the first part, what type of algorithm is used for this JWT token, and what type of token it is. It is a JWT token, and what type of key is used to sign it. So that's a key reference. The client can go and check for the key reference and get corresponding public key, which they can use to verify the signature. And in the claims, there are so many metadata around each and every attribute has its own importance. Some of them have security sensitivity. So it's a must-have in the OpenID Connect. So there is a difference between OWASP and OpenID Connect. OWASP is more like a framework which will help you to create other protocol stack. OpenID Connect is a tailored version of OWASP, which makes it mandatory to do the certain things to ensure there is a certain level of security. So even it can have the basic profile information about the user. This is a typical OpenID Connect authorization code flow. So as you can see, there is a resource owner, which is also known as a user, and there is a client. Client, you can consider maybe it's a Gmail or G Drive, whatever it is. So an application which want to authenticate the user and get the information about the user. The identity provider, it can be accounts.google.com. So that is an identity provider by Google, and resource server can be further API, like maybe contacts API or some API, which can provide more information about the user. So when user try to access the Gmail will say, oh, I don't know about you. I will redirect you to accounts.google.com. So it will redirect the user to accounts.google.com, and the user will enter his credential there and authenticate himself against identity provider. So he's not sharing his password with the Gmail. He's only sharing his password or any credential with accounts.google.com. Then he will get redirected back with an authorization code. The Gmail or Google Drive will use that authorization code, and it will have its own client secret. So this flow is used for the clients who can securely keep the secret. So it will use its secret to identify which client it is, and it will take that authorization code and send a back channel request to the accounts.google.com. Then accounts.google.com will provide ID token and access token and optionally a refresh token if it is needed. And Gmail can use the tokens to get more data from other internal APIs from Google. So this is a slightly different version of the authorization code flow with Pixie, because there are cases where you can't keep a client secret in your clients. As an example, there will be mobile application, JavaScript single page application like Angular, React, and there are several applications where you can't keep the client secret. In that case, there won't be any secret in the client. What client will do is client will generate a unique random code for each authentication sequence. When a user comes, it will generate a unique sequence, and it will also convert that random code to hash, and it will send that hash to the identity provider, which is also known as a code challenge. So when the user authenticate with identity provider, it will again get an authorization code. When it will receive the code, it will take the actual random code, which is also known as code verifier, and it will use that code and send to the identity provider. Identity provider already know the hash of the initial code, so identity provider will convert this code verifier and compare the hash, then only it will give the tokens back to the client. So this is a discovery endpoint for Google's. So there is a standard URL for most of the OpenID Connect discovery endpoint. As you can see, when a client will access this URL, it will get all the information about where is the authorization server, where is the token endpoint, and where it can fetch the public key about the identity provider. So if you'll go to the public key URL, you can find all the public key by Google, which Google used to sign the JWT token. So you can take this public key and verify if the token is actually issued by the accounts.google.com. SAML. So SAML is a traditional way of doing federation. It's also known as security assertion markup language. OpenID Connect is considered as a successor of SAML. So SAML always focusing on an organization centric. So that means if your organization want to exchange data from one application to another application. Whereas OpenID Connect is more about a user centric. If user want to exchange his data from identity provider to the client. So, and SAML use XML message format to exchange the data. Whereas OpenID Connect use JSON and REST, and both communicate through HTTPS. SAML security is based on XML security. All the XML insecurity is also applicable to SAML. All the XML parser issues or all other issues related to XML. Whereas OpenID is Connect based on JSON object signing and encryption. And client registration is static in SAML, whereas in OpenID Connect, client registration can be dynamic also. And identity discovery and deploy discovery is also static in SAML. In OpenID Connect is dynamic. As I showed you before, that URL, that's a standard URL. Any clients can go there and get all the identity provider information. SAML is using front-end channel for attribute exchange, whereas OpenID Connect use both front-end and back-end channel to communicate with the identity provider. And SAML is mainly used for a web application, whereas OpenID Connect can be used for web application, mobile application, JavaScript, single page, whatever you want to integrate. The benefits of OpenID Connect. So OpenID Connect will enable end-to-end up to the API level federated identity and access management system. You don't have to create your own auth to authorization server in order to communicate with your API. You can hand over your access token to your API. That token can be verified with an OpenID provider server. It also enables with a lightweight token and encourages developers to use it frequently along with their HTTP requests as a bearer token. As it's lightweight, it's also easier to implement a short-lived token. So OpenID Connect will also help to get the consent from user, which is very important for GDPR. So if you are logging with the Google sign with the Google, Google will normally ask, do you want to share your inbox access or contact access? And you can tailor down what kind of access. If you want to give to a third-party client, you have a possibility to do that. It's in the protocol, but it's not a default option. If you want, you can enable it, especially if you want to share the authentication information with the third-party clients. And OpenID Foundation has so many certified libraries to integrate with the OpenID provider server, and there are so many certified OpenID provider identity server which you can use. So, OpenID kind of certification. It's very important to have a strong integration. It doesn't matter if you have a secure identity provider and secure application. If your integration is weak, you will lose all the security benefits from OpenID Connect. So there are certified OpenID providers and certified relying parties available from OpenID Connect. Most of them are free, and there are some services. But if you go to OpenID.net certification, you can find a whole list of certified providers. You can just reuse all those relying party for your application. Also, it will help with the less development effort. So, you don't have to spend too much development effort to make this integration. These are few of the OpenID Connect certified. There are so many others. I'm sorry, I can't list all of them here. So this Keycloak is one of my favorite OpenID provider, which is a free and open source software. You can simply run using a Docker command and run an OpenID Connect certified identity provider. And, you don't have to worry about all those security requirements from NIST and the application security. All of them are implemented in Keycloak, or even identity server is another one. AppOut is a client integration SDK, so it's mainly used for mobile applications. So if you want to integrate your mobile application with an OpenID Connect, you can use AppOut. AppOut is originally from Google. Google donated to OpenID Foundation. So, so custom implementation and integration. We all have colleagues who always like to try things and they want to do all the things by themselves. So, please avoid if possible. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are so many certified integrators, but if you still have to do it, if you still want to do it, OpenID Foundation also provide test automation suite which you can run against your implementation, and make sure that your implementation follow the specification. If your implementation don't follow the specification, there is a chance of a security issue associated with it. Sorry, FIDO2. So now we federate everything to the one place, and we make sure that all the authentication is happening through that place. And we don't want that other guys to do the authentication in front of your OpenID server. That's where FIDO2 comes. FIDO stands for Fast Identity Online. So FIDO include both the CTAP and WebAuthn. I think Subi covered about WebAuthn, which is one part of FIDO2 standard protocol. FIDO2 enable a stronger authentication using public key cryptography. In the traditional authentication, we keep the shared secret in our application or even in our identity provider. So attackers are always interested to hack that shared secret in your database. But in FIDO2, we have public key cryptography. We have public key just related to the particular website or host name is in your database. Even an attacker get access to that public key, he can't use anything with that. So this is a high-level picture how different protocols comes into play. So you have device called authenticator, and you also have FIDO2 server. FIDO2 server will communicate to your browser through WebAuthn API. Then your laptop will communicate through your authenticator using CTAP protocol. So provide phishing-free authentication. So no one can FIDO2 authentication. So in FIDO2, they verify the origin and they also verify the signature. So you can't even host a phishing domain and fake the signature or sign it. And FIDO2 also prevent man in the middle by verifying the challenge and signature. And FIDO2 prevent reply attack by verifying the counter in both authenticator and server side. So there are different forms of authenticator. So there are authenticators called platform authenticator, and there are authenticators called roaming authenticator. The platform authenticator, if you have Android 7 Plus, your phone is a platform authenticator. If you have Windows Hello with your Windows 10, you can use it as a platform authenticator. You don't have to buy a key. That is a roaming authenticator. If you want to use across multiple devices or multiple laptops, you can also use a roaming authenticator. So this website explained very well how, I think I have enough time. So yeah, I will show. So this, if you will go to, if you have a mobile phone with Android 7, you can give it a try. And or if you have a Windows 10 Hello, you can give it a try with your laptop. So this is a test registration. Don't worry about the data you're entering. They won't persist your data. So I will put a test 1, 2, 3. So I have a FIDO2 authenticator, external authenticator roaming. So I have fingerprint reader there. So it will show you how it is happening in the animation, not just the WebAuthn part, also with the CTAP authenticator. So now I just need to touch my key. It should now release a public key, so it will sign it and register with the website. It will show all the process. Now I have an ID and public key registered with the FIDO server. If I will click login next, I will use this ID. So it will show me pop-up. Just need to touch again. Yeah. Anyway, login is so if you want to try with more debugging, you can enable the debugger and get more technical detail how this protocol works. But it is very important to know about FIDO2. It is going to have a serious impact on how we authenticate. And FIDO2 works very well with OpenID Connect. So you can implement a FIDO server in your identity provider. So you don't have to implement FIDO2 inside your each and every application. That is a wrong strategy to do FIDO2 implementation. Your application don't even need to worry how your identity provider is doing it. So if your identity provider got the FIDO2 implementation, they can easily consume that strong authentication. So as you can see, the FIDO server is inside your identity provider, and the applications, as I mentioned in the previous flows, always redirect the user to your identity provider, like accounts.google.com. So Google also got a FIDO2 authenticator support. You can use that to, implement a secure authentication. So, please don't roll your own identity and access management using a custom OAuth2 or JWT. Please use OpenID Connect instead. So that's pretty much it. Any questions? So if you want to ask me more questions later, you can send me email or you can contact me on Twitter. I'm happy to answer the question, but I think we have enough time for questions now. Go.
Hi, great presentation. I'm sorry if you've covered what I'm about to ask, because I missed the first part of the presentation. But you emphasized on not rolling out your own custom implementation. So I've seen a setup before, and which I've criticized, and I would like to get your thoughts on it. So there was a decision to use Keycloak for authentication within a project on the site. But as time went on, it became a thing of building business rules on top of Keycloak You know what I mean? And Keycloak ended up being just a token issuer, right? And for verification, pretty much just that.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm like, why not just create your own JWT and put the scope and whatnot policies, that whatever information you need for authorization thereafter, and stick it into JWT and figure out, you know, your renewal strategy and things like that. And I've seen articles on Medium with people doing great things like that, which seemed like a no-brainer to me, to a normal site. But of course, there are still things you might miss as someone building your own custom solution. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on doing something like that for custom, whether you think it's a good idea, or you think the Keycloak / whatever tool, OpenID tool that is out there, what your thoughts are on that.
So I don't know exactly what is your custom requirements, but normally with identity and authentication, it's a common requirement for everybody. You need to have a proper identity information and you need to authenticate a user, right? So maybe some advanced fine-grained or coarse-grained authorization issues you may have. Still, if you are using Keycloak properly, right? So Keycloak has a different ways to implement a fine-grained access control. It also has support for UAM, which is another protocol for a coarse-grained access control. But as I mentioned, it doesn't matter if you're using Keycloak or anything like that. Keycloak itself is an open source software, right? So if you want to customize something, you can do that. There is no way you can even extend the Keycloak if you want to do it. But, you know, the point is that don't do that in individual applications, right? So you federate everything and you have one central system which will do it. It may be Keycloak or it may be some other software. It's better in that pattern rather than going and doing an identity and access management with each and every individual application, which will be a pain point because you have to focus on all those security requirements and you will definitely miss. And your developers are not there to do a secure IAM. They are there to deliver business functionality. They are more bothered about, right? So it's better to do in this pattern in a federated, but as I mentioned, if there is a custom requirements, you can still implement in your central identity provider, right? So, yeah. Any other questions? Okay, then. Thank you.